Hello, this is Glenn Crothers, and today I'm excited to talk to trombonist Steve Davis and pianist David Hazeltine, who will be bringing their quartet to the Café on Sunday, June 15th at 7 p.m. as part of the Louisville Jazz Society's Master Series. It's a real honor to talk to you both today. Two musicians who I've said before I've been listening to for years. You both played with a who's who of jazz greats, from Jackie McLean, who Steve, I guess he was one of your key mentors, right? To Art Blakey, Chick Corea, and Sonny Stitt, and Chet Baker, and Freddie Hubbard, and Avishai Cohn, and Roy Hargrove, and Lou Donaldson. I could go on. The list goes on. But I'm most interested, given that you guys are playing together at the Café on June 15th, on when and how you began collaborating and playing with each other.
Steve?
Yeah, Dave.
It's been so long. It's been such a long time. I mean, just seems like we've always been in there, but I know there was a beginning. What year would you put that, Steve?
Wow.
The beginning of One for All probably was when we got together.
Like early 1995, maybe?
But we had actually done, remember I did the Art Blakey commercial or something at his apartment with you. That's when I first met you, when you were with Art.
Briefly, yeah, in 1990. I was skinny and had hair, Glenn. Not so much these days. Yeah, and then Dave is someone that I looked up to and continue to look up to. But at the time, had heard a couple recordings of his and was a musician I was very interested to hopefully play with one day, and that certainly came true. And we, I remember vividly having played with Joe Farnsworth, our friend and great drummer, and Joe and I think Joe had bought Dave's debut record on the Sharp 9 label called Four Flights Up that featured Peter Washington on bass and the great drummer Killer Ray Appleton, and of course my hero Slide Hampton on trombone, quartet record. And Joe and I listened to that album together, and we heard Dave's arrangements of I Should Care and the stylistics Bet You By Golly Wow. And we were absolutely mesmerized. Just sitting there one afternoon, listening to it and saying, man, what is that? Oh, man, we got to play with that guy. Oh, my gosh. You think he'd play with us? And so that's kind of, I know it's probably humorous to Dave now, but that's really how anyway, in my memory, I associate that recording. And the fact that it was Slide Hampton, too. So for me, wow, hearing how Dave treated his writing and approach for a quartet situation with the great Slide Hampton on trombone. I mean, wow, what a model for me to follow.
And it was shortly after that we started the band, right? I mean, we started playing at Augie's together.
Yes, yeah. And Dave was playing the Fender Rhodes at Augie's, yeah.
Very cool. And 30 plus years later, you're still playing together.
We still like each other.
How about that? We talk on the phone, everything.
Well, David, you've talked in the past about how horn players have influenced your musical development. Could you tell me about how playing with Steve has shaped your playing?
Yes. Well, I think that Steve has influenced my playing in terms of especially accompanying a trombonist. I think it's slightly different than higher pitched instruments, and I think that there has to be some awareness of register, and when I'm comping behind a trombonist, especially somebody as fluent as Steve is, and melodic and beautiful sounding. As a matter of fact, there's one there. I have a memory, Steve, of when I was floored. This was after One for All had been together for a little while, maybe a year or two, and we were playing some gigs, and we played a gig up in Hartford, I think.
Yeah.
And Mary Davis, Steve's ex-wife, sat in on piano.
Yeah.
And it was the first time that I got a chance to listen to the band out front. And I sat in front of Steve and just was completely mesmerized. He said mesmerized before, but I was so awestruck by his sound because I'm always behind him, or on the side of him. So I don't get a chance to hear the sound coming out directly out of his horn. And I got to tell you, man, this guy, he's got a sound, like a big sound, and it's so beautiful and so full. And the notes that he plays are, of course, pop influenced, and I was mesmerized. And ever since then, I've been waiting for a chance to get back out front and listen to Steve. But it doesn't happen. But I hear it that way now when I'm playing on the bandstand with him, and we're not sure about the future of One for All, that group. But Steve and I have been talking, and I think we're going to start a new configuration of one sort or another. But I really enjoy playing with Steve, and the other thing that I wanted to say is he's had an even greater influence on my writing because he's an amazing writer. Steve Davis is an amazing writer, and the care that he puts into his compositions and the harmonies and the moving voices, he's been a big influence on my writing.
Wow.
So.
Well, speaking of One for All, I've been listening to your enormous back catalogs, both individually and together. And I particularly liked, I've been particularly taken by the collaboration in the sextet, One for All, which has been around since 1996?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And is recorded, if I'm counting correctly, and maybe you guys count, I think 16 records?
That sounds about right, although I think there's one that's not counted as a One for All record, and it was actually our first record is under Steve's name, right, Steve?
Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, Dig
What
Deep.
was that? Dig Deep.
Dig Deep, which is on the Crisscross. I think it was my second leader date on the Crisscross label, and when that came up, we had already, we had already kind of hit it off together. Jim Rotundi, God bless his soul, Jim Rotundi and Eric Alexander and Joe Farnsworth and Dave and myself, and we had different bassists joining us for different gigs, and then Nat Reeves, our dear friend Nat Reeves, played on the Dig Deep session, which just happened to be timely, and it was my date, and I thought, well, I should use this group of musicians for this record, and because that's just what was happening at that time, and it was evident, that this was going to be a very fruitful endeavor for all of us collectively. And then we did that date, and then I think it was like maybe not even 2 months later that Dave's affiliation with the Sharp 9 label, Mark Edelman's label, he kind of hooked us up with him, and we were out at Rudy Van Gelder's studio with Peter Washington on bass this time, and the same unit recorded Too Soon to Tell, Jim Rotundi's classic tune, and that was the first One for All record, and Dave brought his great arrangements, and we all contributed music for that, and then I think, Dave, our first two dates were Sharp 9 records.
Too Soon to Tell and Optimism.
And Optimism, right. And then we were off and running as a band. And, we were gigging around New York primarily, but also finding other opportunities to play, a little bit of traveling. And it was potent, it was really something.
Well, the four of us with Jim and Eric and myself and Steve would come to Louisville every summer and do the Aebersold camp.
All right.
That's
Yeah.
right.
That was that was another opportunity. It's funny because sometimes there were a lot of musicians that did the Aebersold camp that they live in New York. I didn't see them all year round, and then we'd show up together in Louisville. But those were some memorable times. When you started coming, Steve, we almost had the whole band there.
Yeah, yeah, because you and Eric and Jim had been doing it for a
Right.
while. And I got the call, I think it was the summer of 2008, um, from Jamie Abersol. And I was delighted to be involved. And as Dave mentioned, we were there together often, the four of us. And oh, I don't know, Rufus Reed,
Yeah, we played with Rufus.
would play with us. Wow, lucky us,
Just some random players.
yeah, right, right. And or one of the great Louisville musicians, Tyrone Wheeler, would play bass with us. Or there are a lot of great musicians there, Jonathan Higgins, and so many great people. So it was always fun, and yeah, we would do some of our repertoire at the faculty concerts in Louisville for about
Jason,
10.
we met Jason there also.
Oh man, and we met Jason Tiemann, who will be joining us along with Nat Reeves for our gig on June 15th. So yeah, there's a lot of very meaningful. I don't want to say old because we ain't no fossils. We're still here doing it, but some longtime friendships and collaborations and musical connections, and so it's going to be great. It's going to be fun.
I'm really interested in how busy musicians with their own careers manage to sustain this collaboration for that long. That's your last record was in 2024. That's a long time you guys have been playing together.
That's right. 3 decades.
Yeah, man.
It wasn't easy. And I mean, I'd like to say that group took priority, but it often did not. And it's just a financial issue. It's hard to fly 6 guys around, have hotel rooms, all of that stuff. And especially we each had other, what would you call it, accounts, clients? I mean, people that Steve's working worked with Chick Corea. I was working with John Faddis or Slide Hampton or whatever it was. And so we have to make a living. So I think that always was a priority. But the band, I mean, well, at least the way I felt about it, that was my favorite thing to do, is play with that band.
Oh,
favorite
man.
gig, without a doubt. It was always very meaningful to me.
Yeah, yeah, same. I mean, it was like home. It was our
Yeah.
musical home.
Yeah.
And it was almost unspoken in a way, like we all just knew it. And you know, I mean, for me to play with Jim Rotundi and Eric Alexander all those years on the front line,
It's amazing.
it's just well, it's something I'll cherish forever, the rest of my days. And particularly, I have to say, when Dave brought a new arrangement for us to play, whether it was a treatment of a standard or one of his original compositions, Eric and Jim and we savored it, like the voicings were so rich and hip.
There's no 3 guys that could play it like you guys did. I mean,
Oh,
that
man.
was
Wow.
something to behold.
It was always just so hip and tasteful, and
Oh, that's nice.
it's like it felt like I can conjure this in my mind right now. It's like I'm just, it was like air in my hands, like playing the parts,
Mm.
Dave's parts with those guys. It just, we had and Joe Farnsworth, and whether it was John Weber, who played in the band for a long time, or Peter Washington, or Nat Reeves, or at times David Williams. We were very fortunate to have many great bassists. Dwayne Burno, bless his soul, he
Bulldog.
uh, yeah, Ray Drummond. Oh my goodness, we had 2 record dates with the great Ray Drummond. So it was Rufus Reed worked with us too, as I mentioned, and in New York as well, on a few occasions. So we were fortunate to have, but this core of the 5 of us was really special, and we covered a lot of ground musically.
Yeah.
I think Dave, you can speak to this. That I remember Dave being adamant about this, that we didn't want to be, and we all were, we didn't want to be a cover band, or sometimes people would draw the inevitable comparison to the Jazz Messengers. All we would say is thank you. That's a compliment.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, no
but we
kidding.
weren't literally doing Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers repertoire though at all
Right,
for
right.
decades. And we finally did do a record for the Venus Japan label. One of our 4 sessions for them was a tribute to Art Blakey, but that came way later, and we had been very clear about not doing that. We were doing our own music and whatever we felt like doing. Um,
Right.
Well,
it's
well, you're
come
both
together.
composers, so I wanted to ask you about, and David, you mentioned in the interviews in the past that composing can sometimes be difficult for you. So how does the collaboration enhance your songwriting, the tunes that you come up with, and how do you decide which tunes are right for the right setting?
I think that first of all, that group. I think I can speak for all of us, but for me, that group was a perfect vehicle for writing, and always gave me something to write for. I mean, I would write for my own dates, for my own trio things, and stuff like that. But my real love was writing for those horns, writing for that group, writing for Joe Farnsworth. Um, just because you really heard I mean, that's as good as it was going to get, listening to these 3 guys play my melodies, man. It's unbelievable. And it's so gratifying to be in that situation and to be able to, I can't remember a single time, Steve, where I would bring something in or you would bring stuff in or anybody would, and it would sound terrible. I don't remember that happening even one time where we'd throw something out. We all brought tunes to a rehearsal for a record date or rehearsal for a gig, and then we'd play through them, and then we'd record them, and we'd love them, and then we'd play them on gigs. So I think that the band being the way it was, and so with so many highly skilled musicians, it just was an inspiration, something to live for, something to write for.
Yeah, I absolutely. And in everything else that I've been involved with over the years, and my own record dates, where I might have had trumpet and either alto, maybe Mike DeRubo, the great alto player, he and I collaborated off and on for a long time, going back to our Hartford, Connecticut roots, um, and a young trumpeter that we love named Josh Bruno. He played on a few of my dates, and Jim Rotundi was fond of him as a young voice, but it might be another project with different horn players. But I always found that the one for all in my writing would shine through into this other situation I was writing for, because I was learning and taking in and absorbing so much of Dave's writing, Jim's writing, Eric's writing. It was very strong, like that influence. It influenced me tremendously, and all 3 of those guys and us together. It's like
Mm-hmm.
oh, it's like we all were coming from. We've talked about this often, Dave. Like we're coming from a similar concept, but everybody's who they are too. We all have our own personalities and traits musically and individual influences. So I don't know. Somehow, the playing, the writing, the sensibility just hung together, just fit together so well. And I think we were all influencing each other a lot and just growing and having a good time doing it. And we didn't have to talk a lot about it. Like Dave was saying, we just play something, and you kind of knew what to do. And we didn't have to get into the minutia so much, or how are we going to phrase this, or are we off on 3, or all that kind of. We didn't have to do any of that. How are we going to articulate this? It's like you just kind of just felt this is. Oh yeah, okay, I get it. This is how it goes. And
You can really hear that partnership, that collaboration on the records.
I'm glad,
Good.
man.
Yeah, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of influences, you're both educators. David, you're at SUNY Purchase, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Steve, you're at the Hart School at the University of Hartford, correct?
Well, I was for many years, but the last 3 years I'm at the Berklee College of
Oh,
Music
Berkeley, cool, cool.
in Boston. Yeah,
Well, so
yeah.
how does teaching jazz shape your approach to playing the music? How
Wow.
does teaching shape your?
That's a good question. It's a funny
It is a
question.
good question. Yeah.
I'm going to let you take that one, Steve.
I don't know
No,
if I,
Steve. I think Steve probably teaches more than I do. I mean, I think
or
you're a
maybe
little busier that way. But
maybe cumulatively, perhaps. Yeah. I had enough coffee to answer this question. That's no, I I've found that, well, first of all, what good fortune to have your day job be music all these years for me,
right,
and sharing music with
that's it.
like-minded young musicians. When I started teaching at the college level, thank you, Jackie McLean, for putting me in that position at 24 years old. Uh, they weren't really much younger than me. It was kind of like your buddies, and you're sharing teaching, you're sharing the music that we all love, that they love, that I love, we all love it. So, and then over the years, the students got younger. I don't know how
Yeah.
that happened. Funny how that happens. But, one day, many, many years ago, I just decided, after being called Professor Davis, which always made me a little, not uneasy, but, just sort of, yeah, maybe uneasy. Like I regarded Jackie McLean as Professor McLean, or, something like that. And so all of a sudden now I'm being called Professor Davis. So I looked up the word professor, and it doesn't mean, know-it-all guru sitting on the side of a mountaintop in the lotus position, come and sit at my feet, for I know all and I shall dispense all knowledge. It doesn't mean that. Professor is one who shares, who's an enthusiast who shares their expertise and knowledge in any given subject to profess. I mean, it's right there.
Right.
So that's what we do. I've just been sharing it a little longer than an 18 or 19 or 21-year-old young musician. Um, but I do learn from the students, and I'm listening to them, and they always have a fresh idea about the music. Um, and so I'm not quite as dumb as I look. Like I'm taking notes and learning from them too. But mostly I can share experience and just some insights into how to go about it, and maybe some things to consider along the way that hopefully makes it easier for them to be successful professional musicians, ideally. And then I think teaching helps us, and then I'll be quiet, helps us to revisit things that we thought we already knew.
Yeah.
Mm,
And every time I come back to
mm,
some repertoire, some period of the music, a composer, or studying a certain player, or whatever it may be, it's so humbling. And it just makes you realize I'll never know this as deeply as I'd like to, and
mm,
I wish
mm,
to. And I'm going to keep coming back and learning
mm,
and learning,
mhm,
relearning. And then you
mhm.
share it with some
Yeah,
like-minded. Yes. I mean, what could be better? So
yeah,
it's been great, and it's helped me grow. Yeah.
yeah.
It's as a teacher myself in a different field, but as a teacher myself, I really appreciate your thoughtfulness about that. It makes a lot of sense, and that idea that you revisit things and relearn them as you're teaching them is really important. So let's just shift gears a little, talk a little bit about the quartet you'll be bringing to Louisville on June 15th. What's the origin for this most recent project? Obviously, it grows out of One for All, but what made you decide to play together without the rest of the band members?
Well, unfortunately, we lost Mr. Rotundi last
Right.
July. So that has something to do with it, Steve, right?
Oh,
I think.
absolutely, it does. It's yeah. Yeah, but we
Yeah,
got to keep playing. We got to
right.
keep that's how we honor Jim, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Steve and I, have even when One for All was together and thriving, we often collaborated idea wise on the telephone or hanging out or whatever. And I think we always felt that if One for All should ever cease to exist, that somehow Steve and I would do something together. I think we enjoy each other's music and each other's playing on a level of, and we've been doing it for so long that it's almost a crime not to continue, you know, and we seem to be more interested in that or have more time to do it than some of the other members of the band, so I
Yeah.
think that has to do with why we're doing Louisville. We're talking about forming a unit to record and play around, and so we're going to do Louisville, and then we're doing something at the Rochester Jazz Festival, and hopefully
Nice.
we'll continue to work and evolve kind of a new kind of group.
Yeah.
Right. And we also played quartet just back in March at the Jazz Kitchen in
In
Ah,
Indy.
that's right. Forgot about that.
Indianapolis.
And Ball
Yeah.
State.
And then Ball State in Muncie. And that was with John Weber on bass and George Flutis, the great Chicago world-class great drummers. So, and we just, playing quartet. And Dave and I have done quartet years ago. I remember Dave hiring me for, different engagements, usually in New York. And it was always such an honor, like, wow, man, I gotta eat my Wheaties. And, you know, what is the David Williams always says, I'm doing my push-ups, just to get ready. And
Uh,
because, of course, Eric Alexander has had Dave Hazeltine play in his quartet, and Dave has had Eric play. And they've done recordings and played together. And so, and Jim too. You guys did a lot, Jim Rotundi and Dave, many collaborations. So, I think when Dave and I play together now, even if it is no other frontline mates, just quartet, you all are going to be stuck with this guy, on, you know, on June 15th. But between the two of us, we're kind of carrying all of that with
yeah,
us.
that's right.
And
So
Curtis Fuller and Slide Hampton and JJ Johnson, I mean, they're that's in my DNA. And David played with Slide and Curtis, and he knows all that, just like Cedar Walton and Barry Harris, and that's in Dave's DNA, and so and Buddy Montgomery. And so, these are our mentors, our heroes, and we're kind of trying to just carry all of that somehow into every note we play.
and the band spilled out with, you said, Matt Reeves on bass and Jason Tiemann, Louisville's own Jason Tiemann on drums.
Jay Tizzle, yeah, and NATO, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, it's going to be swinging with those two. You can count on that. And so we're very excited about this concert. Yeah, and to come back to Louisville, I spent the better part of 10 years every July. I spent many a 4th of July in Louisville, Kentucky. Uh, in fact, many 4th of Julys literally at the Louisville Bats game. Because I'm a fan. And Tim Kaufman and Rick Simmerly, two other great trombonists who also taught at Jamie Aebersold workshop. We would always make sure to go. And yeah, it's a wonderful city. We love it there.
So what can the audience expect to hear on Sunday, June 15th? There's going to be originals, some standards, a mix of both. What's your plan in terms of the repertoire?
Probably a mix of both. Probably a few originals, but some things that people might recognize, some standards, some jazz tunes. Right, Steve?
Yeah, yeah. That's what we were discussing recently. And the interesting thing, especially playing with Dave, I mean, the pool of repertoire that comes into my mind is so vast. Like what we could draw upon. It's like we need 2 weeks worth of gigs, I think.
Yeah, that's true. That's funny. Yeah. Can't
Yeah.
squeeze it all into one night.
Yeah.
You got 90 minutes, so choose wisely.
We got it.
Is it one set? Is it one set? Is
It's
it one set?
one 90-minute set. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's what I thought.
Okay.
So that's helpful to reconfirm. So yeah, we'll have a nice program. I believe I'm fairly certain Mr. Hazeltine will do a trio number in there because when you have someone that great who plays in the trio format that great, solo too, that's got to happen. So we'll find a way to feature and program the quartet so that it's a little bit varied and interesting for the listener. We'll definitely do some of Dave's original compositions and a couple of mine, and then we'll choose some standards that we've played together over the years, and maybe something fresh that we haven't. And I have to say this, that as we were talking a few minutes ago about One for All and Jim Rotundi, it just was clear as day in my head. Hey, I could play Too Soon to Tell quartet. We could do it. We could play.
Why not?
Well, thanks so much for talking to me today. I'm really excited now about the show. I was excited before. I'm more excited now after listening to you guys chat. Remember to the audience out there that the Steve Davis, David Hazeltine Quartet with Nat Reeves on bass and Louisville's own Jason Tiemann on drums will be at the Café on Sunday, June 15th at 7 p.m. as part of the Louisville Jazz Society's Masters Series. This is our second show in our Masters Series, bringing in, national acts here to Louisville. Our shows at that Café, as people know, have been regularly selling out, so get your tickets to see these Jazz Masters as soon as possible. And you can get those tickets at the Louisville Jazz Society website, which is louisvilljazz.org. Thanks again, Stephen and Dave, for talking to me today. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Glenn. Thanks so much.